A single Instagram notification destroyed everything. While Sarah Mitchell screamed in labor, her husband was 70 miles away at a luxury spa with his mistress. He thought he could delete the evidence, but he underestimated the woman he betrayed. What started as a cheating scandal became a federal investigation exposing a multi-million-dollar fraud targeting successful women. You won't believe how this spa day selfie brought down a master manipulator. The notification sound that would destroy Sarah Mitchell's life was barely audible over the hum of the ultrasound machine. She didn't hear it at first, too mesmerized by the grainy image of her daughter on the monitor. 8 months pregnant and glowing. Sarah squeezed Derek's hand as Dr. Reynolds pointed out tiny fingers and toes. "Everything looks perfect," Dr. Reynolds announced, wiping gel from Sarah's rounded belly. "Baby Emma is measuring right on track for delivery in 4 weeks. Derek Thompson, 35 and devastatingly charming, leaned down to kiss Sarah's forehead. His phone buzzed again against his thigh, and she felt his attention shift like a tide pulling away from shore. "Just work stuff," he murmured, that practiced smile sliding across his face. "You know how investors are. They think my world revolves around their schedules." Sarah had heard that excuse 1,000 times in the past year. Derek's tech startup, Thompson Innovations, was supposedly on the verge of a major breakthrough in artificial intelligence. At least, that's what he told everyone at the country club, at dinner parties, in his perfectly curated LinkedIn posts. They drove home to their sprawling house in Westlake, Austin's most prestigious neighborhood. Sarah had bought the property herself 3 years ago with commissions from her real estate empire. She specialized in luxury homes, and business was booming. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd become an expert at selling people their dream lives. "Babe, I need to take this call," Derek said, already heading toward his home office before Sarah could respond. The door clicked shut, and she heard his voice drop to that urgent whisper he used for his so-called emergency business calls. Sarah ran her hand over her belly, feeling Emma kick against her palm. Something felt wrong, but she couldn't name it. Maybe it was pregnancy hormones, or maybe it was the way Derek's eyes never quite met hers anymore when he said he loved her. Her best friend and business partner, Jessica Chen, had been dropping hints for months. Jessica was a successful divorce attorney who'd seen every possible betrayal, and her instincts were razor sharp. "Trust your gut," Jessica had said over lunch last week. "In my experience, when something feels off, it usually is." But Sarah wanted to believe in the fairy tale. They'd met at a tech conference where she was networking for high-end clients. Derek had swept her off her feet with grand gestures and bigger promises. He painted pictures of their future in broad, Instagram-worthy strokes. That evening, Derek emerged from his office looking stressed, running his hands through his perfectly styled hair. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked from the kitchen, where she was preparing dinner. "Yeah, just dealing with some investor drama," he said, already reaching for his phone again. "Actually, I might need to take a quick trip to Dallas tomorrow. Big meeting with potential funders." Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. "Tomorrow, Derek. I'm 36 weeks pregnant. The doctor said Emma could come any day now." I know, he said, that smooth salesman voice kicking in. "But this could be the deal that changes everything for us. Sets up Emma's entire future. I'll be back by evening. I promise." The way he said promise felt rehearsed, like dialogue from a play he'd performed before. That night, Sarah lay awake listening to Derek's steady breathing beside her. His phone sat on the nightstand, occasionally lighting up with notifications. She'd never been the type to snoop. But something primal and protective stirred in her chest. At 3 a.m, sharp pain shot across her lower back. Sarah sat up, breathing slowly through the sensation. "False alarm," she told herself. Just Braxton Hicks contractions. But deep down, she knew Emma was coming. And Derek was planning to be 70 miles away in Dallas, chasing another deal that might not even exist. Sarah woke to wetness between her legs and a contraction that stole her breath. 4:30 in the morning, and her water had broken. Emma was coming whether Derek was ready or not. "Derek," she whispered, shaking his shoulder. "Derek, wake up. It's time." He bolted upright, instantly alert in that way that always impressed her. For a moment, he was the man she'd fallen in love with, focused and capable. "Are you sure?" he asked, already reaching for his clothes. Another contraction gripped her, stronger this time. "I'm sure." The drive to Austin Women's Hospital was a blur of traffic lights and Derek's nervous chatter about timing and breathing techniques he'd memorized from pregnancy apps. Sarah found herself wondering when he'd become the type of man who prepared for everything except actually being present. By 6 in the morning, Sarah was hooked up to monitors in a sterile delivery room, contractions coming every 5 minutes. Derek paced by the window, phone pressed to his ear. "I understand the urgency," he said into the device, "but my wife is in labor. Can we push the meeting to next week?" Sarah caught fragments of the conversation. Something about investors flying in from California, a narrow window of opportunity, millions of dollars on the line. "What's so important it can't wait?" she asked between contractions. Derek sat on the edge of her bed, taking her hand in both of his. "Remember when I told you about the AI patent, the one that could revolutionize healthcare? These investors want to move fast, but they're only in town today. Derek, your daughter is about to be born." "I know, sweetheart, and I'll be here for that." "The doctor said, first babies take 12 to 20 hours. This meeting is only 2 hours. Max, I'll be back before anything major happens." Dr. Reynolds chose that moment to check Sarah's progress. "You're still at 4 centimeters, she announced. "It could be a while yet. Some women labor for 18 hours or more with their first—" Derek's phone buzzed with a text message. Sarah saw his jaw tighten as he read it. "They're threatening to walk if I don't show up today," he said quietly. "Sarah, this deal could set us up for life. Set Emma up for life." The way he framed it made Sarah feel selfish for wanting him to stay. This was supposed to be about their daughter's future, not his ego or her insecurity. 2 hours, she said finally. "Promise me 2 hours." 2 hours, he repeated, kissing her forehead. "I love you both so much." After Derek left, Sarah tried to focus on breathing through the contractions, but her mind kept wandering to the urgency in his voice when he'd taken that call. She'd built her career reading people, and something about Derek's performance felt rehearsed. Jessica arrived an hour later, still in her power suit from an early morning court appearance. "Where's Derek?" she asked, looking around the empty room. "Dallas. Investor meeting." Jessica's expression hardened. "He left you here alone." "It's important for Emma's future," Sarah said, but the words felt hollow even to her. "Sarah, honey, you're having a baby. Today, right now. There is literally nothing more important than that." Another contraction hit, stronger than before. Sarah gripped the bed rails and breathed through it, but when it passed, she felt tears streaming down her face. "What if something goes wrong?" she whispered. "What if Emma needs him and he's not here?" Jessica pulled out her phone. "What's the name of this company Derek's supposedly meeting with? Morrison Ventures, I think." "Why?" Jessica's fingers flew across her screen. After a few minutes, her face went pale. "Sarah, Morrison Ventures hasn't taken any meetings this month. According to their website, the entire executive team is at a conference in Singapore. The words hit Sarah like ice water. That can't be right. Check again. I'm looking at their social media right now. Photos from the Singapore conference posted this morning. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Meeting running long. Investors are tough negotiators. Love you. The message that was supposed to comfort her now felt like a knife twisting in her chest. If he wasn't meeting with Morrison Ventures, where was he? And why was he lying about it while she labored alone with their daughter? The contraction that doubled Sarah over at 11:15 in the morning coincided perfectly with Jessica's sharp intake of breath. Sarah was too consumed by pain to notice her friend's face go white as she stared at her phone screen. "Sarah," Jessica said carefully, "I need you to look at something." "Can it wait?" Sarah gasped, gripping the bed rail. "I'm kind of busy having your goddaughter." "No, it can't wait." Jessica held up her phone, showing an Instagram story from an account called Amber Fitness Goddess. The image showed two champagne flutes clinking together against a backdrop of what looked like a luxury spa. The caption read, "Midday mimosas because we deserve it. Hashtag spa day. Hashtag self-care. Hashtag unwind." "I don't understand," Sarah said. "Who is this woman?" "Keep watching." Jessica swiped to the next story. This one was a boomerang video of someone in a plush white bathrobe walking toward what appeared to be a massage room. In the background, barely visible but unmistakably familiar, was a man's profile, Derek's profile. "That's not possible," Sarah whispered. The third story made it undeniable. A selfie of the blonde woman, Amber, with a clay face mask, making a pouty face at the camera. Behind her, clear as day, Derek sat in a bathrobe scrolling through his phone, completely relaxed and obviously not in any business meeting. The timestamp showed it was posted 27 minutes ago. "The Four Seasons Spa," Jessica read from the geotag. "That's in Dallas, but it's not anywhere near the business district." Sarah felt like she was drowning. The monitors next to her bed started beeping erratically as her heart rate spiked. A nurse rushed in. "What's happening? Is everything okay?" But Sarah couldn't speak. She was staring at her phone, at the image of her husband lounging at a spa with another woman while she labored alone with their child. "Ma'am, I need you to try to calm down," the nurse said, adjusting something on the IV drip. "Stress isn't good for you or the baby." "Calm down." The words echoed in Sarah's head like a cruel joke. Her husband had abandoned her during childbirth to spend the day at a spa with his mistress, and she was supposed to calm down. "How long?" Sarah managed to ask Jessica. "What do you mean? How long has this been going on?" Jessica was already scrolling through the woman's profile. This Amber Hayes has about 50,000 followers. She's a personal trainer and fitness influencer. Sarah, there are photos going back months, different locations, different dates. Each swipe felt like another betrayal. Amber at a restaurant Sarah recognized from Derek's supposed business dinners. Amber on a weekend trip to San Antonio that Derek had claimed was a solo retreat to focus and strategize. Amber wearing what looked suspiciously like the necklace Derek had given Sarah for their anniversary. "He's been planning this," Sarah said, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "The timing isn't coincidental. He knew I'd go into labor soon, and he planned to be somewhere else." Another contraction gripped her, but this time the physical pain paled in comparison to the emotional agony. Derek hadn't just cheated on her, he'd orchestrated his betrayal around the birth of their daughter. "I'm going to kill him," Jessica said, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "Legally speaking, I'm going to destroy him in court." "Jess, I can't think about that right now. I need to focus on Emma. But even as she said it, Sarah's mind was spinning. How long had Derek been lying to her? How many business trips were actually romantic getaways? How many late-night calls were really pillow talk with his mistress? Her phone buzzed with another text from Derek. Wrapping up now. These guys are brutal, but I think we've got a deal. On my way back to you. Beautiful. Can't wait to meet our daughter. The casual lies, delivered while he was literally photographed with another woman, made Sarah's stomach turn. She showed the message to Jessica, who shook her head in disgust. Screenshot everything, Jessica advised. Every story, every post, every message. We're going to need all of it. For what? For when you divorce his lying ass and take him for everything he's worth. Sarah wanted to protest, to say that maybe there was an explanation, that maybe they could work through this. But as she looked at the photos of Derek and Amber, at the evidence of months of deception, she realized there was no coming back from this. Her marriage was over. Her daughter was about to be born. And Derek Thompson was about to learn what happened when you betrayed the wrong woman. The pain of transition labor at 2 p.m. was nothing compared to the agony of Derek's text messages, while Sarah gripped Jessica's hand through contractions that felt like her body was tearing apart. Derek continued his performance as the devoted husband stuck in traffic. Babe, I'm so sorry. Accident on I-35 has traffic at a complete standstill. I'm literally not moving. How are you doing? Sarah stared at the message, knowing he was lying, knowing he was probably still at the spa with Amber getting couples massages or sipping champagne by the pool. Tell him I'm fine, Sarah managed between contractions. Tell him to take his time. Jessica looked at her sharply. Sarah. I don't want him here, Sarah said, the words feeling strange in her mouth. I don't want him touching me or pretending to care when I know where he really is. Dr. Reynolds checked Sarah's progress and frowned. You're at 8 centimeters now. Things are moving faster than expected. We should call your husband. He's on his way. Jessica lied smoothly. Traffic is bad, but he knows to hurry. While Dr. Reynolds prepared for delivery, Jessica continued documenting Amber's social media activity. The woman was apparently live streaming parts of her spa day, completely oblivious to the fact that she was providing evidence for a future divorce case. Look at this, Jessica whispered, showing Sarah her phone during a brief break between contractions. She posted a video of them getting side-by-side massages 30 minutes ago. He's not even trying to hide it. The casualness of it was what hurt the most. Derek wasn't sneaking around in shadows, consumed by guilt. He was flaunting his affair, confident that Sarah would never find out, or maybe not caring if she did. At 3:15, Sarah's phone rang. Derek's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment, her heart leaped with the irrational hope that he was calling to confess, to apologize, to race back to her side. Hey, beautiful. His voice came through the speaker, warm and concerned. How are my girls doing? Or, we're managing, Sarah said, her voice carefully controlled. I'm still stuck in this nightmare traffic, but I should be there within the hour. Is everything okay? You sound strange. The audacity of it took Sarah's breath away. He was asking if she sounded strange while he was literally at a spa with his mistress. I'm in labor. Derek. Of course I sound strange. I know. I'm so sorry I'm not there yet. I feel terrible about this timing. But Sarah, the meeting went incredible. This deal is going to change everything for us. Even now, even while he was cheating on her, he couldn't stop performing. The meeting that never happened was somehow incredible. The deal that didn't exist was going to change their lives. I have to go, Sarah said. Another contraction is starting. I love you, Derek said. Tell Emma Daddy is coming. Sarah ended the call and immediately felt another wave of pain. But this time, it wasn't from labor. Jessica was showing her another Instagram story from Amber. The woman was now posting photos of an elaborate lunch spread, clearly still at the spa, clearly still with Derek. He just told me he was stuck in traffic, Sarah whispered. He's not even good at lying, Jessica said. Look at the timestamp on this post. 2 minutes ago. The monitors around Sarah's bed started beeping more urgently. The contractions were coming faster now, and she could feel Emma moving down, ready to be born. I need to push, Sarah said. Doctor. Reynolds appeared at her side, checking the monitors. Not yet, Sarah. I know it feels like you need to, but we're not quite there. I can't hold back much longer. Where's your husband, Doctor? Reynolds asked. Should we call him again? Sarah met Jessica's eyes. Her best friend gave her a slight nod, understanding exactly what Sarah needed. He's not coming, Sarah said quietly, and I don't want him here. Sarah, are you sure this is a big decision to make while you're in labor? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. At 3:42 in the afternoon, with Jessica holding one hand and a nurse holding the other, Sarah pushed her daughter into the world. Emma Mitchell entered life screaming, perfect and beautiful, and completely unaware that her father had chosen a spa day over her birth. Dr. Reynolds placed the baby on Sarah's chest, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. The betrayal, the lies, the shattered marriage, none of it mattered compared to the tiny person looking up at her with Derek's dark eyes. She's perfect, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. She is, Jessica agreed, and she's lucky to have you as her mom. As if summoned by some cosmic irony, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Traffic finally moving. Be there in 20 minutes. Can't wait to meet our little girl. Sarah looked at the message, then at her daughter, then at Jessica. Screenshot that too, she said. I want a record of every lie he told while Emma was being born. Because Sarah Mitchell was done being the naive wife who trusted her husband's stories. She was ready to become the woman who would destroy Derek Thompson's carefully constructed world, one piece of evidence at a time. Derek burst through the hospital room door at 4:30, carrying gas station flowers and wearing the expression of a man who'd been through hell to get there. His hair was perfectly styled, his clothes unwrinkled, and he smelled like expensive spa products rather than the stress sweat of someone who'd been trapped in traffic for hours. Oh my God, Sarah, I'm so sorry, he began, his voice cracking with practiced emotion. The traffic was unbelievable. There was a multi-car accident, and then construction, and I couldn't even get off the highway to take back roads. Sarah held Emma against her chest and watched Derek's performance with new eyes. Every gesture, every word, every expression felt calculated and false. It's okay, she said quietly. You're here now. Derek approached the bed cautiously, as if sensing something had shifted. Can I hold her? Sarah hesitated for just a moment too long. Derek noticed. What's wrong? Is she okay? Are you okay? We're fine, Sarah said, but she didn't hand Emma over immediately. How was your meeting? Derek's face lit up with manufactured enthusiasm. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Morrison Ventures wants to invest $5 million in the first round. Sarah, this is going to set Emma up for life. Jessica, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. Morrison Ventures. That's interesting. Derek turned to look at her properly for the first time since entering the room. Oh, hey Jess. Didn't see you there. I bet you didn't. Tell me, how was Singapore? Singapore. Derek looked confused. What do you mean I was in Dallas? Right, of course. My mistake. Jessica's smile was sharp as a blade. Must have confused you with the Morrison Ventures team, who are all currently at a conference in Singapore. Sarah watched Derek's face cycle through confusion, realization, and panic in the span of 3 seconds. She'd seen that same expression when she'd caught him in smaller lies before, but she'd always given him the benefit of the doubt. I think there's been some misunderstanding, Derek said slowly. I met with their Dallas representatives. Show me, Jessica said. Show me their business cards, the meeting notes, anything from this incredible deal you just signed. Derek patted his pockets. I don't have them with me. I left everything in the car. Of course you did. Sarah felt Emma stir against her chest and looked down at her daughter's face. This tiny person deserved better than a father who would lie about where he was during her birth. Derek, Sarah said softly, I need you to be honest with me about something. Anything, babe? What's wrong? You're acting strange. Where were you today? I told you, Dallas, meeting with investors. Sarah reached for her phone with one hand while keeping Emma secure with the other. She pulled up Amber's Instagram profile and turned the screen toward Derek. The change in his expression was immediate and devastating. The color drained from his face, and his mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Who is she? Sarah asked, her voice eerily calm. Sarah, I can explain. Who is she? Her name is Amber. She works with the company. It was a business lunch. Jessica laughed, a sound devoid of humor. A business lunch at a spa. In bathrobes, getting couples massages. Derek's eyes darted between Sarah and Jessica, looking for an escape route that didn't exist. It's not what it looks like. What does it look like? Derek, Sarah asked. It looks like you've been having an affair while your wife was in labor with your daughter. Jessica answered when Derek couldn't. Sarah, please, let me explain. Yes, I've been seeing Amber, but it's complicated. Our marriage has been strained lately, and she was just someone to talk to. Talk to at luxury spas while I was giving birth to your child. I didn't know you'd go into labor today. The admission hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Derek realized immediately that he just confessed to planning to spend the day with his mistress, regardless of Sarah's condition. So, if I hadn't gone into labor, Sarah said slowly, you would have spent the entire day with her anyway. That's not... get out. Sarah, please. We can work through this. I love you. I love Emma. This was a mistake, a terrible mistake, but we can fix this. Get out of my room. She's my daughter, too. I have rights. Jessica stood up from her chair. Actually, Derek, you don't have any rights until your name is on the birth certificate. And given that you abandoned your wife during labor to spend the day with your girlfriend, I'd say your parental rights are going to be very limited. Derek looked at Sarah one more time, desperation replacing the calculated charm he usually wore like armor. Sarah, I'm begging you, don't throw away our family over one mistake. One mistake. Sarah's voice rose for the first time. Derek, there are photos of you two going back months. Months of lies. Months of affairs. Months of you funding your double life with our money while I planned for our daughter's future. How did I find out? Because your girlfriend is an influencer who documents every moment of her life online, including her affair with my husband. Derek stood there for another moment, probably calculating whether he could salvage the situation or minimize the damage. When he realized he couldn't, his mask slipped completely. Fine, he said, his voice cold. But this isn't over. Sarah, Emma is my daughter, and I'm not going to be cut out of her life because you can't handle the fact that our marriage was already over. Our marriage was over the moment you chose another woman over your daughter's birth, Sarah replied. Now get out before I call security. Derek left without another word, taking his gas station flowers with him. Sarah looked down at Emma, who had slept through the entire confrontation and made a silent promise. I'll protect you from all of this, sweetheart. I promise. But even as she made the vow, Sarah knew the hardest battles were yet to come. 3 weeks after Emma's birth, Sarah sat in her living room surrounded by printed bank statements, credit card bills, and screenshots that painted a devastating picture of Derek's double life. What she discovered went far beyond a simple affair. Derek had been systematically draining their joint accounts to fund his relationship with Amber, spending tens of thousands of dollars on trips, jewelry, and luxury experiences. Emma slept peacefully in her bassinet while Sarah worked with the methodical precision of someone who'd built a multi-million-dollar real estate business from nothing. Every receipt told a story. Every transaction revealed another lie. $2,000 at Tiffany on March 15th, she murmured to Jessica, who was helping organize the evidence. That's the day Derek gave me that necklace for our anniversary, except he bought 2 of them. The man has absolutely no creativity, Jessica replied, adding the receipt to a growing pile. Look at this. Hotel charges in San Antonio the same weekend he told you he was going to that tech conference in Houston. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Derek. We need to talk about custody arrangements. Emma needs her father. She ignored it, just as she'd ignored the dozen other messages he'd sent since the hospital. Derek was trying to control the narrative, to frame himself as the repentant father being unfairly kept from his child. But Sarah was building a different story, one documented with his own financial recklessness. Here's the thing that really gets me, Sarah said, holding up a credit card statement. He took her to the same restaurant where we had our first date, the same hotel where we spent our honeymoon. He's not just cheating, he's recycling our entire relationship. Jessica looked up from her laptop, where she'd been researching Texas divorce law. Sarah, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. What now? Derek filed for divorce this morning, and he's claiming you're mentally unstable. The words hit Sarah like ice water. What? He's alleging postpartum depression, saying you're making irrational decisions and that Emma would be better off in his primary custody while you get help. Sarah felt the world tilt beneath her. He can't do that. He abandoned us during her birth. I know, but he's got an expensive lawyer now. Richard Morrison, one of the best family attorneys in Austin. They're painting your discovery of the affair as a psychotic break, saying you're using Emma as a weapon to punish Derek for a mistake. A mistake. A year-long affair that he funded with our money is a mistake. That's exactly what they're calling it. One mistake that you're blowing out of proportion due to hormonal instability. Sarah looked at Emma sleeping peacefully and felt a rage so pure it was almost clarifying. Derek wasn't just trying to get away with cheating. He was trying to take their daughter away and paint Sarah as the unstable one. What do we do? Sarah asked. We fight back, and we fight dirty. Jessica's expression was grim. But Sarah, I need you to understand something. Richard Morrison doesn't lose. He's going to try to destroy your credibility, your parenting ability, everything. This is going to get ugly. Before Sarah could respond, her doorbell rang. Through the window, she could see a man in a suit holding an envelope. Process server, Jessica said. Derek's moving fast. Sarah opened the door and accepted the papers with steady hands. The divorce petition was thick and full of legal language, but certain phrases jumped out at her: irreconcilable differences, temporary custody, mental health evaluation. He's asking for primary physical custody, Jessica said, reading over Sarah's shoulder. And he wants the house. The house I bought with my money before we were even married. Apparently, it became marital property when you added his name to the deed. Sarah felt a laugh bubble up in her throat, but it came out sounding slightly hysterical. So let me get this straight. Derek cheats on me with money from our joint accounts, abandons me during childbirth, and now he wants to take our daughter and my house because I'm supposedly the unstable one. That's exactly what he's doing. Then we give him a war. Jessica smiled for the first time in days. Now you're talking. But Sarah, we need more than financial records and Instagram posts. We need something that shows a pattern of manipulation and deception. Like what? Like proof that this wasn't his first affair? Like evidence that he's been planning this divorce for months? Like something that shows he's not the successful businessman he pretends to be? Sarah thought about Derek's behavior over the past year, the late-night phone calls he claimed were investor meetings, the weekend trips he said were for business development, the way he'd been encouraging her to add his name to her various accounts and properties. Jessica, she said slowly, what if Derek planned all of this? What if the affair, the timing, even the pregnancy, was all part of some scheme to get his hands on my money? That's a serious accusation. It's a serious situation. Derek's company has never shown me a profit statement. He's always been vague about investors and funding. What if Thompson Innovations is just a shell company? What if he's been using me as his personal bank account while planning to divorce me and take half of everything I've built? Jessica's eyes lit up with the gleam of a prosecutor who just found the smoking gun. If that's true, we can prove it. Financial fraud, intentional misrepresentation of assets, maybe even identity theft if he's been forging documents. How do we prove it? We start with his business records. Every legitimate company has to file certain documents with the state. If Thompson Innovations is fake, there will be gaps in the paperwork. Sarah felt a spark of hope for the first time since Derek had filed his petition. And if we can prove he married me under false pretenses to get access to my money, then Derek Thompson is going to learn what happens when you try to con a woman who's smarter than you are. 2 days later, Sarah sat in Jessica's law office staring at documents that painted a picture of deception so elaborate it took her breath away. Thompson Innovations existed on paper, but barely. No employees, no real address, no actual products or services. Derek's been running a ghost company for 3 years, Jessica explained, pointing to the state filing records spread across her desk. Look at this. He claims to have 12 employees, but there's no payroll tax filings. He lists a downtown office address, but it's actually a mail forwarding service. So where's all the money been coming from? Sarah asked, though she was beginning to suspect she already knew the answer. From you. Every time Derek claimed to need capital for business expansion, every joint account he had access to, every credit card with his name on it, he's been funding his fake company with your real earnings. Sarah felt sick. For 3 years, actually, it goes back further than that. I had my investigator dig into Derek's financial history before he met you. Sarah, he was on the verge of bankruptcy when you started dating. Credit cards maxed out, student loans in default, no stable income. The timeline was starting to make horrible sense. Derek had pursued her with a determination that had felt romantic at the time. Now it looked calculated. He targeted me, Sarah said quietly. It looks that way. You were exactly what he needed. Successful, financially stable, trusting enough to believe his stories about being an entrepreneur. Sarah's phone buzzed with another text from Derek. I know you're angry, but think about Emma. She needs both her parents. Let's meet and talk about this like adults." The manipulative tone made her stomach turn. Even now, he was trying to make her feel guilty for protecting herself and their daughter. "There's more," Jessica said, pulling out another folder. The investigator found something interesting about Amber Hayes. "What about her? She's not Derek's first affair. There was another woman, Lisa Chen, about 8 months ago. Similar pattern, social media posts with Derek in the background, expensive dates and trips. What happened to her? That's the interesting part. She broke it off with Derek right around the time you announced your pregnancy. According to her social media, she started dating someone else, someone who actually has money." Sarah processed this information. So Derek moved on to Amber when Lisa found a better option. It gets worse. I found evidence that Derek tried to get Lisa to sign some kind of business partnership agreement. She refused, but if she hadn't, he was going to con her too. Sarah, I think Derek has been running this scam for years. Find a successful woman. Make her fall in love with him. Get access to her finances. Then either marry her or move on to the next target. The scope of Derek's deception was staggering. This wasn't just infidelity. This was financial fraud on a massive scale. "Can we prove any of this in court?" Sarah asked. "We can prove the fake company. We can prove he's been using your money to fund his affairs. But the bigger pattern?" Jessica hesitated. "That's going to be harder." Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. "Unknown number." "Don't answer it," Jessica advised, but Sarah was already accepting the call. "Sarah Mitchell speaking." "Miss Mitchell, this is Marcus Williams. I used to work with Derek at Thompson Innovations." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "I'm sorry, but Derek doesn't have any employees." "That's what I'm calling about. Ms. Mitchell, Derek Thompson ruined my life, and I think he's trying to do the same thing to you." Sarah looked at Jessica, who was frantically taking notes. "Can you meet us today?" Sarah asked. "I'll meet you anywhere. It's time someone stopped Derek before he destroys another family." An hour later, Marcus Williams sat across from Sarah and Jessica in a quiet coffee shop, looking like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. He was in his early 40s, well-dressed but worn down, with the desperate look of someone who'd been through hell. "Derek hired me 18 months ago," Marcus began. "Promised me equity in Thompson Innovations, talked about revolutionizing artificial intelligence, showed me business plans that looked incredible." "What was your role supposed to be?" Jessica asked. "Chief Technology Officer. I quit my job at Dell to work for Derek, sold my house to invest in the company, put my kids' college funds into what Derek said was a guaranteed opportunity." Sarah felt her blood run cold. "How much money?" $200,000. Everything I had. Where's the money now? Marcus laughed bitterly. "Gone. Derek claimed there were development costs, legal fees, patent applications. Always had a reason why we needed more capital. When I started asking questions, he fired me and claimed I'd been stealing from the company." "Do you have any proof of this?" Jessica asked. Marcus pulled out a thick folder. "Every document, every email, every contract Derek made me sign. I've been building a case against him for months, but I needed to find other victims." Sarah looked through the documents, seeing her own story reflected in Marcus's experience. The same promises, the same manipulation, the same devastating betrayal. "Marcus," she said slowly, "Derek is trying to take my daughter away from me. He's claiming I'm mentally unstable and that he'd be a better parent." "The man is a sociopath," Marcus replied. "He destroyed my marriage, my career, my children's future, and he did it all while smiling and telling me how much he valued our partnership." Will you testify in the divorce proceedings? Jessica asked. I'll do whatever it takes to stop him. As they left the coffee shop, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. Derek might have thought he was smarter than everyone else, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated the women he'd chosen to destroy, and now they were going to destroy him instead. The emergency hearing was set for 10 in the morning, but Sarah arrived at the courthouse an hour early. Derek's lawyer had filed a motion claiming Sarah was an unfit mother who was endangering Emma by refusing to allow supervised visitation. It was an aggressive legal maneuver designed to put Sarah on the defensive. Jessica met her at the courthouse steps, carrying 3 thick binders and wearing the expression of a prosecutor who smelled blood in the water. How are you feeling? Jessica asked. Like I'm about to watch Derek's entire world collapse. Sarah replied, Is Marcus here? He's already inside. So is Lisa Chen. Lisa agreed to testify. Once she understood the scope of Derek's fraud, she couldn't wait to tell her story. Turns out, Derek convinced her to co-sign a loan for $75,000 right before he broke up with her. Jesus. It gets better. My investigator found 2 other women from Derek's past. Same pattern every time. Target successful women, gain their trust, get access to their finances, then disappear when the money runs out or a better opportunity comes along. They walked into the courthouse together, and Sarah immediately spotted Derek sitting with his lawyer, Richard Morrison. Derek was wearing his most expensive suit and the earnest expression he usually reserved for sales presentations. When he saw Sarah, he stood up as if to approach her. Don't, Jessica warned him. Any communication goes through me. I just want to see my daughter, Derek said, his voice loud enough for other people in the hallway to hear. I don't understand why Sarah is being so vindictive. The performance was flawless, designed to make Sarah look like the unreasonable one. If she hadn't known better, she might have felt guilty. Save it for the judge, Jessica replied. Inside the courtroom, Judge Patricia Davis took her seat and immediately got down to business. She was known for being no-nonsense and intolerant of legal games. This is an emergency hearing regarding temporary custody of the minor child Emma Mitchell, Judge Davis began. Mr. Morrison, you filed this motion. Present your case. Richard Morrison stood up. Every inch the polished attorney. Your Honor, my client Derek Thompson is a loving father who's being denied access to his daughter by a woman who's clearly suffering from postpartum mental health issues. For the next 20 minutes, Morrison painted Derek as the victim of Sarah's emotional instability. He presented Derek's version of events: a successful entrepreneur whose single mistake was having an emotional affair during a stressful time in his business. According to Morrison, Sarah had discovered the affair and immediately became vindictive, using their daughter as a weapon to punish Derek. My client is asking for supervised visitation while Ms. Mitchell receives the mental health treatment she clearly needs, Morrison concluded. Derek took the stand and delivered an Oscar-worthy performance. He spoke about his love for Emma, his regret over the affair, and his concern for Sarah's well-being. He claimed the affair with Amber was an emotional mistake brought on by the stress of running a company and the fear of becoming a father. I love my wife, he said, his voice breaking slightly. And I love my daughter. I just want the chance to be the father Emma deserves. When Morrison finished his questioning, Jessica stood up for cross-examination. Mr. Thompson, you testified that your affair was an emotional mistake brought on by business stress. Can you tell the court about the nature of your business? I run a technology company called Thompson Innovations. We're developing artificial intelligence applications. How many employees does Thompson Innovations have? Derek hesitated for just a moment. We're a lean startup. Currently, it's mostly me and a few contractors. I see. and your annual revenue. We're pre-revenue right now, still in development phase. Jessica walked to her table and picked up one of her binders. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit A. These are the official state business filings for Thompson Innovations. She handed copies to the judge and to Morrison. Sarah watched Derek's face as he realized what was happening. According to these documents, Mr. Thompson, your company has no employees, no business address, and has never filed a tax return showing any income. Would you like to explain how a non-existent company could cause you enough stress to justify abandoning your wife during childbirth? Morrison objected, but Judge Davis overruled him. Answer the question, Mr. Thompson. The documents might not reflect the full scope of our operations, Derek said weakly. I see. Let's talk about your finances then. You testified that you're a successful entrepreneur. Can you explain why you've been using your wife's money to fund your affairs? Jessica presented the credit card statements, the receipts, the evidence of Derek's spending on Amber and Lisa. Each document was another nail in Derek's coffin. Your Honor, Jessica continued, the respondent hasn't just been unfaithful. He's been running an elaborate financial fraud, targeting successful women and using their money to fund his lifestyle and affairs. She called Marcus Williams to the stand. Marcus testified about his experience with Derek, the fake business promises, the stolen money. Then Lisa Chen took the stand and described her own relationship with Derek, the financial manipulation, the lies about his business success. By the time Jessica finished presenting her evidence, Derek looked like he was about to be sick. Morrison tried to object to the relevance of the testimony, but Judge Davis was clearly interested in the pattern of behavior. Mr. Thompson, the judge said finally, I've heard some disturbing testimony today. But what concerns me most is not your infidelity or even your questionable business practices. What concerns me is that you abandoned your wife during the birth of your child to spend the day at a spa with your mistress, and then you had the audacity to claim that she's the one who's mentally unstable. Derek tried to respond, but Judge Davis held up her hand. I'm granting temporary sole custody to Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Thompson, you'll have supervised visitation twice a month, pending a full investigation into the allegations of financial fraud. This hearing is adjourned. As they left the courthouse, Derek caught up to Sarah in the parking lot. You think you've won, he said, his mask finally slipping completely. But this isn't over. I'll appeal this decision. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. Good luck with that, Sarah replied, because everyone's about to know exactly what kind of person you really are. She was right. By the end of the week, Derek's story would be all over local news and social media. But first, there was one more revelation that would complete his destruction. The call came at 7 in the morning, 3 days after the custody hearing. Sarah was feeding Emma when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Miss Mitchell, this is Detective Rodriguez with Austin Police Department Financial Crimes Unit. We need to talk. An hour later, Sarah sat in a sterile conference room at police headquarters with Jessica beside her and Detective Rodriguez across the table. The detective was a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and the demeanor of someone who'd seen every possible scam. Ms. Mitchell, we've been investigating Derek Thompson for several months now, Detective Rodriguez began. Your divorce case brought some new information to our attention, and we'd like to ask you some questions. What kind of investigation? Sarah asked. Identity theft, wire fraud, money laundering. Derek Thompson has been running a sophisticated con operation targeting successful women in Austin and surrounding areas. Jessica leaned forward. How many victims? At least 7 that we know of. Marcus Williams filed a complaint 6 months ago, But we needed more evidence to build a case. Your divorce proceedings provided that evidence. Detective Rodriguez spread photos across the table. Sarah recognized some of the women from Austin's business community, successful real estate agents, lawyers, doctors, all of them attractive, accomplished, and wealthy. Derek's pattern is always the same, the detective explained. He researches his targets through social media and professional networks. He creates a fake business identity, approaches them at networking events or through mutual connections, then begins a romantic relationship designed to gain access to their finances. How long has this been going on? Sarah asked. At least 5 years. Probably longer. We think Derek has stolen over $2 million from various victims. The scope of it was staggering. Sarah had thought she was dealing with a cheating husband, not a professional criminal. There's something else, Detective Rodriguez continued. We found evidence that Derek was planning to disappear after your daughter was born. What do you mean? He applied for a passport under a false name 3 months ago. He opened a bank account in the Cayman Islands. He was liquidating assets and moving money offshore. Sarah felt the room spin. He was going to abandon Emma. It looks that way. We think the affair with Amber Hayes was designed to give him an alibi while he prepared to flee the country with as much of your money as he could steal. But he filed for divorce instead. Because you discovered the affair too soon, his original plan fell apart. So he switched to plan B. Divorce you, claim mental instability, get custody of Emma, and then disappear with her and your assets. The casual cruelty of it took Sarah's breath away. Derek hadn't just been cheating on her. He'd been planning to steal their daughter and disappear forever. What happens now? Jessica asked. We're issuing a warrant for Derek's arrest. Wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit kidnapping. He's looking at 20 years minimum. 2 hours later, Sarah watched from her living room window as police cars surrounded Derek's downtown apartment. Local news trucks arrived within minutes, and by evening, Derek's arrest was the lead story on every Austin television station. The reporter's voice drifted through Sarah's speakers as she held Emma and watched Derek being led away in handcuffs. Derek Thompson, a local businessman, was arrested today on multiple felony charges including wire fraud and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Police say Thompson ran an elaborate con operation targeting successful women in the Austin area, stealing over $2 million across multiple victims. Sarah's phone buzzed with texts from friends and colleagues who'd seen the news. Everyone wanted to know if she was okay, if there was anything they could do. But the text that surprised her most came from Amber Hayes. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. He told me you were separated and that the divorce was already final. I feel sick about all of this. Sarah stared at the message for a long time before responding, You were a victim too. He's very good at manipulation. Thank you for not hating me. I'm testifying against him at trial. Good. He needs to be stopped. That evening, Jessica came over with takeout and champagne. Are we celebrating? Sarah asked. We're celebrating the fact that Derek Thompson will never hurt another woman again, Jessica replied, pouring 2 glasses. And we're celebrating the fact that you and Emma are safe. Sarah looked at her daughter, sleeping peacefully in her swing, completely unaware of the drama that had surrounded her birth. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't found out about the affair, Sarah said. If he'd gone through with his original plan, but you did find out, and you fought back, and now he's going to prison for a very long time. It doesn't feel real yet. It will, and when it does, you're going to realize that you didn't just save yourself and Emma. You saved every woman Derek would have targeted in the future. Sarah raised her glass. To the power of social media evidence. to the power of smart women who refuse to be victims. They drank to that, and to the future that Sarah was finally free to build for herself and her daughter. A future that didn't include Derek Thompson's lies. 1 year later, Sarah stood in the conference room of Mitchell & Associates Real Estate, looking out at the Austin skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Her company had expanded to 15 agents and had just closed its most profitable quarter ever. Emma babbled happily in her high chair, charming the clients who'd stopped by to sign closing documents on a $3 million estate. Derek's trial had ended 6 months ago with a conviction on all counts. 25 years in federal prison, with restitution orders that would keep him paying back his victims for the rest of his life. Sarah had testified at the sentencing hearing, not for revenge, but to make sure the judge understood the full scope of Derek's crimes. "Your Honor," she'd said, "Derek Thompson didn't just steal money, he stole dreams, destroyed families, and traumatized women who trusted him, but he also taught us something valuable about our own strength." The judge had been impressed by Sarah's composure and had mentioned her testimony specifically when handing down the maximum sentence. Now, as Sarah watched Emma take her first wobbly steps across the office carpet, she marveled at how much their lives had changed. Emma was walking, babbling in what sounded almost like sentences, and had Derek's dark eyes but Sarah's determined chin. "She's going to be a force of nature," Jessica said, visiting during her lunch break. "Just like her mother." "I hope she's smarter than her mother was," Sarah replied. "I hope she never trusts someone just because they tell her what she wants to hear." "You weren't naive, Sarah. You were targeted by a professional predator. There's a difference." Sarah's phone buzzed with a news alert. Derek was appealing his conviction, claiming his trial hadn't been fair. Sarah deleted the notification without reading the full article. Derek Thompson was her past, and she refused to let him take up any more space in her future. "Have you thought about dating again?" Jessica asked. "Not really. Emma and I are doing fine on our own." "I know you are. But eventually, you might want to share this amazing life you've built." Sarah considered this. In the year since Derek's arrest, she'd focused entirely on rebuilding her life and her business. She'd gone to therapy to process the trauma of Derek's betrayal and manipulation. She'd learned to trust her instincts again and to recognize red flags she'd previously ignored. "Maybe someday," she said. "But if I ever do date again, the first thing I'm doing is running a full background check." Jessica laughed. "And checking their social media for evidence of secret spa days?" "That too." Emma chose that moment to take 3 consecutive steps toward Sarah before falling on her bottom. Sarah scooped her up, spinning her around until she giggled. "What do you think? Should we focus on building our empire first and worry about men later?" Emma babbled something that sounded like agreement. Sarah's assistant knocked on the conference room door. "Sarah, there's someone here to see you. Says it's about the Derek Thompson case." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Who is it?" "FBI Agent Martinez. She says it's good news." Agent Martinez was a professional woman in her 40s who radiated competence. She shook Sarah's hand and smiled at Emma before getting down to business. "Ms. Mitchell, I wanted to update you on our investigation into Derek Thompson's activities. We've recovered most of the money he stole from you and the other victims. Most of it. $2.3 million. It was hidden in offshore accounts and cryptocurrency. You'll be receiving a substantial restitution payment within the next month." Sarah sat down hard. The money Derek had stolen from her accounts, the credit card debt from his spending, the financial devastation of the divorce, all of it would be reversed. "There's more," Agent Martinez continued. "We've identified additional victims in other states, Derek's operation was larger than we initially thought. Your decision to fight back and expose him prevented dozens of other women from being victimized. After Agent Martinez left, Sarah sat in her office holding Emma and trying to process the news. The money would be life-changing. But more importantly, Derek's victims were finally getting justice. Her phone rang. Unknown number, but Sarah answered anyway. Sarah Mitchell speaking. Ms. Mitchell, this is Dr. Amanda Foster from the Women's Legal Aid Society. We'd like to invite you to speak at our annual conference about financial abuse and how to recognize manipulation tactics. I'm not sure I'm qualified to speak about that. Ms. Mitchell, you exposed one of the most sophisticated con artists we've ever seen. You saved yourself and your daughter, and you helped put a dangerous predator in prison. You're exactly who our audience needs to hear from. Sarah looked at Emma, who was reaching for the framed photo on Sarah's desk. It was a picture of the two of them taken the day Emma learned to walk, both of them laughing and covered in playground sand. Okay, Sarah said. I'll do it. Because if her story could help even one woman recognize the warning signs of manipulation, if it could save even one family from Derek's kind of devastation, then everything she'd been through would have meaning beyond her own survival. That evening, Sarah put Emma to bed and sat on her balcony overlooking the Austin lights. A year ago, she'd been a different person, trusting, naive, willing to believe the best in people, even when the evidence suggested otherwise. Now she was someone who knew the difference between love and manipulation, between partnership and exploitation, between a man who chose her and a predator who targeted her. She was someone who'd fought back and won, and tomorrow, she'd wake up and continue building the life she and Emma deserved, one day at a time. One decision at a time, one step at a time. Derek Thompson had tried to destroy her. Instead, he'd taught her exactly how strong she could be. And that, Sarah thought as she watched the stars emerge over Austin, was the best revenge of all. Sarah's courage saved countless future victims. If this story of justice resonated with you, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this. What do you think about the 25-year sentence? Drop your thoughts below. Subscribe for more shocking real-life stories, and hit that notification bell.